Wild Swans. Far, far away, in the land to which swallows fly for the winter, there lived a widowed king. He had 11 sons and 1 daughter, named Eliza. The 11 brothers were princes. Each had a star on his breast and a sword by his side. They all were going to school, and there wrote with diamond pencils on golden slates. They learned their lessons so quickly and read so easily that everyone knew they were true princes. Their sister Eliza sat on a little stool of plate glass and had a book full of pictures which had cost half a kingdom. The children were happy, but alas, for a very short time. Their father, the king, married a queen who proved to be a wicked sorceress. Evil stepmother came to hate the princes and the little princess. She showed them her unkindness the very first day, while the royal couple celebrated their marriage in the palace. The children decided to play at receiving company.
Let's play like we also have guests. Yes, let's run to the Great Hall. We'll ask our new mother for apples and cakes from the table. Come on, Eliza, hurry up!
Our kind new mother. Please, can we have some cake and apples from the table? We wanted to play at a feast.
Of course, my little darling. Here you are, a teacup full of cakes.
But that's just sand! You want us to treat our guests with sand?
So, what's it sand, silly boy? All you need is to pretend it's a feast. Use your imagination. A bunch of rude, spoiled children. Never mind. I will soon improve your manners.
The next week, she sent little Eliza into the country to a peasant's family. Then she told the king so many lies about the young princes that he gave himself no more trouble about them.
Go out into the world and look after yourselves. Fly like great birds without a voice.
But she couldn't make it so bad for them as she would have liked, for they were turned into 11 beautiful wild swans, and they had a voice. So with a strange cry, they flew through the windows of the palace and sped over the park to the forest beyond. It was yet early morning when they passed the peasant's cottage where their sister lay asleep in her room. They hovered over the roof, twisting their long necks and flapping their wings. But no one heard them or saw them. At last, they flew away. High up in the sky and over the wide world, they sped till they came to a thick, dark wood which stretched to the seashore. Poor little Eliza was alone in the peasant's cottage playing with a green leaf. She had no other playthings. She poked a hole in the leaf, looked through it at the sun, and she seemed to see her brother's clear eyes. When the warm sun shone on her cheeks, she thought of all the kisses they had given her. One day passed just like another. Sometimes the wind rustled through the leaves of the rose bush and whispered to the roses, "Who can be more beautiful than you?" And the roses would say,
Eliza is!
And they were telling the absolute truth. When Eliza was 15, she was taken home. But the young princess was so beautiful that the witch queen only hated her more. She would be happy to turn her into a swan, like she did with her brothers, but did not dare to do so for fear of the king. One day, early in the morning, the queen went into her marble bathroom decorated with soft cushions. She took 3 toads with her and kissed them, saying,
When Eliza comes into the water, seat yourself upon her head, that she may become as stupid as you are. And you will place yourself on her forehead, that she may become as ugly as you are, and that her friends may not recognize her anymore. And you will rest on her heart. Then she will have an evil mind and suffer because of that.
When the toads all jumped into the clear water, it turned green. Then the queen called Eliza.
I prepared you a bath, my darling child. You must be very tired from the long road. Let me help you to undress.
As Eliza stepped into the water, one of the toads sat on her head, a second on her forehead, and a third on her breast. But Eliza did not seem to notice them. When she rose from the water, there were 3 red poppies floating upon it. Had not the toads been venomous because of the witch's kiss, they would have become red roses. At all events, they would become flowers after resting on Eliza's head and on her heart. She was too good and too innocent for sorcery to have any power over her. When the wicked queen saw this, she became very angry.
You come here, spoiled headstrong girl!
She seized Eliza and rubbed her face with walnut juice so that it became quite brown. Then the evil witch tangled her beautiful hair and smeared it with disgusting ointment.
There, now no one will recognize you.
And truly, nobody recognized the young princess anymore. Even the king, her father, was shocked. Who let that ugly beggar in there? Get out, you stinking creature. You are not my daughter. No one but the watchdog and the swallows knew her. But they were only poor animals and could say nothing. Then poor Eliza wept and thought of her 11 brothers who were far away.
No one in this wide world cares for me anymore, apart from my long-lost brothers. But I will find them.
Sorrowfully, young princess stole from the palace. The whole day Eliza walked over fields and moors, till she came to the great forest. She knew not where she's going, but she was so unhappy and longed so for her brothers, who, like herself, had been driven out into the world, that she was determined to seek them.
I will find you, my dear brothers. I will.
Eliza had to be in the wood only a short time when night came on.
I think I've lost the path. I'd better stop and have a rest.
So she laid herself down on the soft moss, said her evening prayer, and put her head against the stump of a tree. All night long she dreamed of her brothers. In her dream, they were all children again playing together. She saw them writing with diamond pencils on golden slates, while she looked at the beautiful picture book which had cost half a kingdom. But her brothers were not writing lines and letters, as they used to do. They described the noble deeds they had performed, and all that they had discovered and seen. In the picture book, too, everything was living. The birds sang, and the people came out of the book and spoke to Eliza and her brothers. But as the leaves were turned over, they darted back again to their places, that all might be in order. When Eliza awoke, the sun was high in the heavens, but she could not see it, for the lofty trees spread their branches thickly overhead, and only gleams shone through the leaves like a gauzy golden mist. There was a sweet fragrance from the fresh grass, and the birds almost perched on Eliza's shoulders. She heard water rippling from a number of springs, all flowing into a lake with golden sands. Bushes grew thickly around the lake, and at one spot, where an opening had been made by a deer, Eliza went down to the water. When Eliza saw her own face, she was quite terrified.
Oh dear, is it really me?
Her face was brown and ugly, her hair so untidy that she really looked hideous. The young princess had wet her little hand, rubbed her eyes and forehead, and the white skin gleamed once more. Then Eliza undressed and stepped into the fresh water. When she had bathed, you couldn't find a more beautiful princess anywhere in the wide world. After having a swim, Eliza had dressed again and braided her long hair. Then she went to the bubbling stream and drank some water out of the hollow of her hand. Then she wandered far into the forest. She thought of her brothers and of her father and mother, and felt sure that she will not be left destitute wherever she went. For the wild apples grow in the woods to satisfy the hungry, and Eliza now stood before one of these trees.
That apple tree has so much fruit.
And truly, the tree was so loaded with fruit that the branches bent under the weight. Here, Eliza ate her breakfast.
Thank you, kind apple tree.
Then, placing props under the branches, went into the gloomiest depths of the forest. Not a bird was there. Not a sunbeam could pierce the dark canopy of the trees. The lofty trunks stood so close together that when Eliza looked before her, it seemed as if she were enclosed behind iron bars.
So quiet and dark, like a prison cell.
The night was very dark. Sorrowfully, Eliza laid herself down to sleep. After a while, it seemed to her as if the branches of the trees parted over her head.
Oh, I feel like the mild eyes of angels look down upon me from heaven.
In the morning when she awoke, Eliza knew not whether this had really been so or whether she had dreamed it. She continued her wandering, but had not gone far when she met an old woman.
Oh, you're all alone in this dark wood, my child. Here, take some berries from my basket. You must be hungry.
Thank you, my good woman. Have you seen 11 princes riding through this forest?
No, but yesterday I saw 11 swans with golden crowns on their heads, swimming in the river close by. Come, I'll show you where I saw them.
Then she led Eliza to a sloping bank, at the foot of which ran a little river. The trees on its banks stretched their long leafy branches across the water toward each other.
Follow the stream, and you'll come to the seashore. There I saw them.
Thank you, my good woman. Farewell.
Eliza walked by the flowing river till she reached the shore of the open sea. And there, before her eyes, lay the glorious sea.
Oh, there's so much water. It's so enormous. And not a sail on the horizon. How am I to cross the sea? How am I to find my brothers?
The countless pebbles lay on the shore, smooth and round by the action of the water.
The water rolls on without weariness, till all that is hard becomes smooth, so I will be patient in my task. Thanks for your lesson, bright rolling waves. My heart tells me you will one day lead me to my dear brothers.
It was lonely on the seashore, but Eliza did not know it, for the ever-moving sea showed more changes in a few hours than the most varying lake could produce in a whole year. When the sun was about to set, Eliza saw 11 white swans with golden crowns on their heads flying toward the land, one behind the other, like a long white ribbon. She went up the slope from the shore and hid behind the bushes. The swans alighted quite close to her, flapping their great white wings. As soon as the sun had disappeared under the water, the feathers of the swans fell off, and 11 beautiful princes, Eliza's brothers, stood near her.
Ah, my dear brothers!
She sprang into their arms, and princes were happy to see their little sister again.
While the sun is in the sky, we fly about as wild swans. But as soon as it sinks behind the hills, we recover our human shape. So we must always be near land before sunset. If we were flying, when we recovered our human form, we should sink deep into the sea. We do not dwell here, dear sister, but in a land just as fair that lies far across the sea. The way is long, and there is no island upon which we can pass the night. Nothing but a little rock rising out of the sea, upon which we can scarcely stand with safety. Yet we thank God for this rock. We have passed whole nights upon it, or we should have never reached our beloved fatherland. For our flight across the sea occupies 2 of the longest days in the year. And here we have found you, our dear little sister. 2 days longer we can remain here, and then we must fly away to a beautiful land which is not our home.
Can you take me with you?
But how? We have neither ship nor boat.
Maybe I'll find a way to break the spell?
They talked about it nearly the whole night, slumbering only a few hours. Eliza was awakened by the rustling of the wings of swans soaring above her. Her brothers were again changed to swans. They flew in circles, wider and wider, till they were far away. But one of them, the youngest, remained behind and laid his head on his sister's lap while she stroked his wings. So they remained together the whole day. Towards evening, the rest came back, and as the sun went down, Eliza's brothers resumed their natural forms.
Tomorrow we shall fly away, and will not return again till a whole year has passed. But we cannot leave you here. Do you have enough courage to go with us? My arms are strong enough to carry Eliza through the wood. Will not all our wings be strong enough to take her over the sea?
Yes, take me with you.
They spent the whole night in weaving a large, strong net of the pliant willow and rushes. On this net, Eliza laid herself down to sleep. And when the sun rose and her brothers again became wild swans, they took up the net with their beaks and flew up to the clouds with their dear sister, who still slept. When the sunbeams fell on her face, one of the swans soared over her head so that his broad wings might shade her. They were far from the land when Eliza awoke.
I must be dreaming. It's so strange and beautiful.
They were now so high that a large ship beneath them looked like a white seagull skimming the waves. A great cloud floating behind them appeared like a vast mountain, and upon it, Eliza saw her own shadow, and those of the 11 swans like giant flying things. Onward the whole day they flew through the air like winged arrows, yet more slowly than usual, for they had their sister to carry. The weather grew threatening, and Eliza watched the sinking sun with great anxiety.
The sun is about to set, but there's no sign of the little rock. What should we do? My brothers are tired because of me. When the sun will set, they would change into men, fall into the sea and be drowned.
She then offered a prayer from her inmost heart, but still no rock appeared. Dark clouds came nearer. The gusts of wind told of the coming storm. From a thick, heavy mass of clouds, the lightning burst forth, flash after flash. The sun had reached the edge of the sea when the swans darted down so swiftly that Eliza's heart trembled.
Oh no, we're falling!
But the swans soared onward.
The sun is half hidden by the waves already. I can see the rock. It's the rock.
The rock did not look larger than a seal's head thrust out of the water. The sun sank so rapidly that the moment the swans touched the rock, it shone only like a star, and at last disappeared like the dying spark in a piece of burnt paper.
It's all right. We are with you. Don't be afraid, Eliza.
Eliza's brothers stood close around her with arms linked together, for there was not the smallest space to spare. The sea dashed against the rock and covered them with spray. The heavens were lighted up with flashes, and thunder rolled from the clouds. But the sister and brother stood patiently holding each other's hands. In the early dawn, the air became calm and still, and at sunrise, the swans flew away from the rock, bearing their sister with them.
The sea's still rough, and the white foam on the waves looks like a million swimming swans.
As the sun rose higher, Eliza saw before her, floating in the air, a range of mountains with shining ice on their summits. In the center rose a castle, with rows of columns rising one above another.
Is this a beautiful land we're flying to?
But the swans shook their heads, for what she beheld were the beautiful, ever-changing cloud palaces of the Fata Morgana, into which no mortal can enter.
What a beautiful castle! Oh, melted away.
One scene melted into another, until at last Eliza saw the real land to which they were flying. Long before the sun went down, she was sitting on a rock in front of a large cave.
Oh, there's so many plants in here. They're so delicate. It looks like a green embroidered carpet.
I hope you'll be comfortable there, little sister. Let's see what dreams will pay you a visit tonight.
Heaven grant that I may dream how to release you.
And this thought took such hold upon her mind that even in her sleep she continued to pray for help. Then it seemed to her that she was flying high in the air toward the cloudy palace of the Fata Morgana. A fairy came out to meet her, radiant and beautiful, yet much like the old woman who had given her berries in the wood, and who had told her of the swans with golden crowns on their heads.
Your brothers can be released if you only have courage and patience. Do you see the stinging nettle which I hold in my hand? Lots of nettles of the same sort grow round in the cave which you sleep, but only these and those that grow on the graves of a churchyard will be of any use to you. This nettles you must gather, even while they burn blisters on your hands. Break them to pieces with your hands and feet, and they will become flax, from which you must spin and weave 11 shirts with long sleeves. Then throw them over the 11 swans, and the spell will be broken. But remember well that from the moment you begin your task until it is finished, even though it will take years of your life, you must not speak. The first word you utter will pierce the hearts of your brothers like a deadly dagger. Their lives hang upon your tongue. Remember all that I have told you."
As the fairy finished speaking, she touched Eliza's hand lightly with the nettle, and pain as of burning fire awoke the young princess.
Ouch! Oh, how it hurts! How it burns me!
It was broad daylight, and near her lay a nettle like the one she had seen in her dream.
So it's true! All that fairy had told me! Oh, I'm so grateful! Thank you, kind Fata Morgana!
Then Eliza went out from the cave to begin work with her delicate hands. The nettle burned great blisters on her hands and arms, but Eliza was determined to bear the pain gladly if that could release her dear brothers. So she bruised the nettles with her bare feet and spun the flax. At sunset, her brothers returned.
Greetings, dear sister. Hello, Eliza. How was your day? Eliza? Eliza! Why are you silent? Speak to me, please! Maybe it's a spell of some new sorcery? Eliza, please, tell us what happened.
But when they saw her blistered hands, they understood what she was doing for them. The youngest brother wept.
Eliza, my dear darling little sister.
And where his tears touched Eliza's hands, the pain ceased, and the burning blisters vanished. The young princess kept to her work all night, for she could not rest till she had released her brothers. During the whole of the following day, while her brothers were absent, she sat in solitude, but never before had the time flown so quickly. One coat was already finished, and she had begun the second when she heard a huntsman's horn, and was struck with fear. As the sound came nearer and nearer, she also heard dogs barking, and fled with terror into the cave. She hastily bound together the nettles she had gathered and sat upon them. In a moment a great dog leaped into the cave, and then another, and another. The hounds ran back and forth barking furiously, until in a few minutes all the huntsmen stood before the cave. The most handsome of them, the king of the country, saw the beautiful girl in the cave and stepped toward her.
"How did you come here, my sweet child?"
Eliza shook her head. She dared not speak, for it would cost her brothers their freedom and their lives. Young princess hid her hands under her apron. She didn't want to show the young and beautiful king how she was suffering.
"Come with me. You cannot stay here. If you are as good as you are beautiful, I will dress you in silk and velvet. I will place a golden crown on your head. You will rule and live in my richest castle."
Then he lifted her onto his horse. Eliza wept bitterly and wrung her hands. But the king said,
"I wish only your happiness. A time will come when you will thank me for this."
And he galloped away over the mountains, holding Eliza before him on his horse. And the hunters followed behind them. As the sun went down, they arrived at a fair royal city, with churches and cupolas. On entering the castle, the king led Eliza into marble halls, where large fountains played, and where the walls and the ceilings were covered with rich paintings. But Eliza had no eyes for all these riches. She could only mourn and weep. Patiently, she allowed the women to dress her in rich velvet and to weave pearls in her hair.
Why are you crying, you child of the woods? Look at the pearls, at the rich dresses that our king gave you. Give me your hands. God, they're all blistered. Hey there, bring me soft gloves. We must hide those red spots somehow.
When finally Eliza appeared in the great hall in her rich dress, she looked so dazzlingly beautiful that the court bowed low in her presence.
Oh, what a stunning beauty. She's so divine. Our king found her in a forest cave, they say.
"I've decided to make that beautiful girl my bride."
Certainly, your royal highness. So divine a beauty surely must be our queen.
Only the archbishop shook his head.
"That fair young maiden is only a witch, I reckon. She has probably blinded the king's eyes and ensnared his heart."
"I've had enough of that. Thank you, Archbishop. Bring musicians. Prepare the feast. There will be a ball tonight, and the loveliest maidens will dance before me and my bride."
After the feast, the king led his woodland beauty through fragrant gardens and lofty halls.
"And you still remain silent, my woodland beauty. You don't like the feast? You don't smile even. She's the very picture of grief. Fine, let's go. I'll show you something."
The king opened the door of a little room in which Eliza was to sleep. It was decorated with rich green tapestry, and so resembled her cave in the wood. On the floor lay the bundle of flax which Eliza had spun from the nettles, and under the ceiling hung the shirt she had made. By order of the king, one of the huntsmen brought these things from the cave.
Here you can dream yourself back again in the old home, in the cave. And here's your work. Maybe it will amuse you now to think of that time among all this splendor.
When Eliza saw all these things that were so dear to her heart, a smile played around her mouth, and the crimson blood rushed to her cheeks. The thought of her brother's release made her so joyful that she kissed the king's hand, and he pressed her to his heart. Very soon the joyous church bells announced the marriage feast. The beautiful dumb girl of the woods was made the queen of the country. A single word would cost her brothers their lives, but Eliza loved the kind, handsome king who did everything to make her happy. She loved him with her whole heart, and her eyes beamed with the love she dared not speak. Therefore, at night, she crept away into her little room, which had been decorated to look like the cave, and quickly wove one shirt after another. But when Eliza began the seventh, she found she had no more flax. She knew that the nettles she needed grew in the churchyard and that she must pluck them herself. But how should she get there?
Oh, what is the pain in my fingers to the torment of my heart? I must take my chance.
Then, with a trembling heart, as if she was about to commit an evil thing, Eliza crept into the garden in the broad moonlight, passed through the narrow walks, found the gate, and walked the deserted streets till she reached the churchyard. She prayed silently, gathered the burning nettles, and carried them home with her to the castle. One person only had seen her, and that was the archbishop. He was awake while others slept.
I knew that my suspicions were correct. Something's not right with the queen. She is a witch. She had bewitched the king and all the people.
Secretly, he told the king what he had seen and what he feared. And as the hard words came from his tongue, the carved images of the saints in a cathedral shook their heads as if they would say, "It is not so. Eliza is innocent." But the archbishop interpreted it in another way.
Look, your royal highness, even saints are against her. They are shaking their heads at her wickedness.
2 tears rolled down the king's cheeks. He went home with doubt in his heart, and at night pretended to sleep. And indeed no real sleep came to his eyes, for every night he saw Eliza get up and disappear in her little room. Day by day his brow became darker. Eliza saw it, and though she did not understand the reason, it worried her and made her heart tremble for her brothers. Her hot tears glittered like pearls on the royal velvet and diamonds, while all who saw her were wishing they could be queen. Time ticked by, and Eliza had almost finished her task. Only one of her brother's shirts was wanting, but again she had run out of flax. Not a single nettle was left in her tiny room. Once more only, and for the last time, Eliza must go to the churchyard and pluck a few handfuls. When she finally dared to go there, the king and the archbishop followed and caught her.
Guards, over here! There's the witch! Now you saw that I spoke true. Your Majesty, she is a witch, so she must be burnt.
Eliza looked at the young king imploringly, but he turned away his head and said,
The people must condemn her.
And Eliza was soon condemned to suffer death by fire. She was taken out of the gorgeous royal halls and led into a dark, dreary cell where the wind whistled through the iron bars.
In there, you witch! We've prepared a bed for you!
They gave her the 10 shirts which she had woven to cover her, and the bundle of nettles for a pillow. But they could have given her nothing that would have pleased her more. She continued her task with joy. Toward evening, she heard at the grating the flutter of a swan's wings. It was her youngest brother. He had found his sister, and now Eliza sobbed for joy, though she knew that probably this was the last night she had to live. Still, she had hope, for her task was almost finished, and her brothers knew where she is. Towards night, the archbishop arrived.
I promised the king to be with you during your last hours, and to hear your confession.
But Eliza shook her head, and begged him to leave by looks and gestures. For in this night, she knew she must finish her task, otherwise, all her pain and tears and sleepless nights would be in vain.
So you refuse to confess, witch? Then you will be forever damned.
The archbishop left the cell, muttering curses, but Eliza knew that she was innocent and diligently continued her work. Little mice ran about the floor, dragging the nettles to her feet to help as much as they could. A thrush, sitting outside the grating, sang sweet songs to her all night long to keep up her spirits. It was still twilight, and at least an hour before sunrise when the 11 brothers came to the castle gate and demanded to speak to the king.
Bring us to the king! We must speak to him!
Get away from the gate or we'll shoot you! The king is asleep and not to be disturbed!
Please, bring us to the king! We have a very important message! Open up or we'll break this damn gate!
Finally, the king's guard appeared at the gate, and even the king himself, inquiring about the noise. At this moment the sun rose, and the 11 brothers were seen no more, but 11 wild swans flew away over the castle. Now all the people came streaming forth from the gates of the city to see the witch burned. An old horse drew the cart on which Eliza sat. They had dressed her in a garment of coarse sackcloth. Her lovely hair hung loose on her shoulders. Her cheeks were deadly pale. Her lips moved, telling the prayer silently while her fingers still worked at the green flax. Even on the way to death, she would not give up her task. The 10 finished coats lay at her feet. She was working hard at the 11th, while the mob jeered at her and said,
See the witch, how she mutters, and there's no hymn book in her hands. She sticks to her ugly sorcery. Let us tear it into 1,000 pieces.
The people pressed toward the cart, and doubtless they would have destroyed the shirts. But at that moment, 11 wild swans appeared and alighted on the cart. They flapped their large wings, and the crowd drew back in alarm.
It is a sign from heaven! She is innocent!
Then the executioner seized Eliza by the hand to lift her out of the cart.
There you are, witch.
But she hastily threw the 11 shirts over the 11 swans, and they immediately became 11 handsome princes.
Greetings, my brave sister! Oh, I'm so glad, Eliza, my darling.
Only the youngest brother had a swan's wing instead of an arm, for Eliza had not been able to finish the last sleeve of the shirt.
Now I may speak. I am innocent.
Then the people who saw what had happened bowed to her as before a saint. But Eliza sank unconscious into her brother's arms, overcome with worry, anguish, and pain.
Yes, she is innocent!
An eldest brother related all that had taken place. While he spoke, a fragrance as from millions of roses rose in the air. Every faggot in the pile made to burn the young queen was covered with roses. And on top of the pile, a white shining flower glittered like a star. This flower the king plucked and placed it in Eliza's chest. Then she awoke from her swoon.
Ah, what a wholesome fragrance. Oh, the peace and happiness are now in my heart.
Then all the church bells rang of themselves, and the birds came in great flocks to the capital, and a marriage procession, such as no king had ever before seen, returned to the castle.